go now to the analysis, and welcome to the programme from Gaza, Tess Ingram, who's the UNICEF spokesperson, joining us live from the Gaza Strip. Tess, thanks for being with us. Joining you as well is our correspondent from Jerusalem, Noga Tarnopolsky. Thank you both for being with us. Tess, can I start with you? Benjamin Netanyahu saying the report that says famine is affecting Gaza is an outright lie. What is your experience of the situation right now?
There is not a doubt in my mind that there is a famine unfolding in Gaza City, and that is at risk of spreading to other parts of the Gaza Strip, including where I have been in recent days in Deir al-Balah. I went to a number of nutrition points where UNICEF is treating malnourished children, and the scale and severity of malnutrition among children there shocked me. It is the worst that I have ever seen. I had parents crying to me, saying that they didn't think that they were going to be able to save their children's lives. And I met a little girl who's just 5 kilograms at almost 1.5 years of age. She should be almost double that weight by now, and that is not an uncommon story. So the evidence is clear, the cases on the ground are clear, the images that have been live streamed around the world are clear. A famine is unfolding in Gaza.
Tess, you already said it, but say it again. It is children, really, that are bearing the brunt of all of this.
That's right. Children are more vulnerable to malnutrition because they have young, growing bodies that need a variety of nutrients to develop properly, their muscles, their bones, their brains. And so when they don't get dietary diversity, food from a number of different groups, they're at a high risk of malnutrition, and we see them become weak and thin first. It's also harder for them to recover. So we're incredibly concerned about the rising numbers of children with malnutrition, which have gone up from 2,000 or so in February to more than 12,000 in July alone. And that threatens to continue to rise if we don't get on top of the situation by bringing in more aid. And the best way to do that is a ceasefire.
Tess, bear with me. I'm going to bring in Noga Tarnopolsky from Jerusalem, our correspondent, who's been observing all matters for us. Noga, that statement from Benjamin Netanyahu, in the light of what Tess has just told us, seems crass in the least. Why is he taking this position? Can you shed some light on that?
Benjamin Netanyahu even went further in an interview on an American right-wing channel just now. He said that this was the modern equivalent of a medieval blood libel leveled against Jews. I find it difficult to answer your question because I'm not inside his head, but politically, inside Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu has staked an enormous amount on his contention that everybody is lying about Israel and that these lies are anti-Semitic. This is one way of not having to ever really respond to these accusations. And we saw some version of it in the statement released tonight by the Israeli army and then by the Israeli Foreign Ministry that didn't so much as tackle the actual contentions made in the UN report, but disputed them using attacks against the methodology about which we obviously know very little. They claimed that the UN had changed the rules of the game midway, just specifically for this report. And since that came out, I can tell you that it turns out that the experts in the field, including the head of Refugees International, have been able to really refute the Israeli arguments one by one. And it sounds almost as if the Israeli response to this UN report was created out of a kind of armchair ignorance about how famine spreads and how famine is defined. So I think we are politically very far from the end of this story, in addition to humanly very far away from the end of this story.
Noga, thanks for that clarity that you always bring to these matters. Let's go back to Tess Ingram, UNICEF spokesperson, joining us live from the Gaza Strip. Tess, thanks for being with us. You're working in incredibly difficult circumstances, but I'm sure you'll say to me that they're not as difficult as the circumstances that the people you're working with and for are suffering, such as your motivation to do the job that you do. And I wonder how you can carry on doing what you do, given what is happening all around you. The words of Tom Fletcher of the UNHCR talking about systematic disruption of aid supply by Israel. Is that what you're seeing it too? Would you back that statement?
We face constant impediments in doing our work here in Gaza, and we've really been calling for a long time now for those impediments to be lifted. The biggest one obviously being the low volume of aid entering the Gaza Strip, but it doesn't stop there. We have difficulty collecting aid from crossings. We need permission to go there and pick it up, and then we need permission to leave again. We're often funneled down routes that are unsafe or damaged. The list goes on. It's very, very difficult for us to get the job done here. And at the end of the day, it's children that bear the brunt of that. They are the ones who suffer as a result of decisions that are being made outside of the Gaza Strip. So we really do need to see that rectified. We continue to call for those changes to be made, for all of the crossings to open, and for aid to be allowed in its scale and unimpeded until it reaches the children that so desperately need it.
And Tess, that is one side of the story. Of course, the other side of the story is that bombing is still taking place. The military operation is still taking place all around you.
That's right. There were heavy bombardments that I heard yesterday, last night, today. They continue. I'm in the middle area of the Gaza Strip, and of course we know that the activity around Gaza City is increasing every day as well. I think it's important for us to speak about this. The focus really is at the moment on the humanitarian crisis, but children continue to be killed and injured every day, on average a whole classroom of children, by the bombardments and the shelling alone. And it continues day in and day out. And when you go to hospitals here, you see that. Children with multiple amputations or burns to their whole body. It's just horrific.
This is absolutely horrific. The word comes to mind as soon as you say it. Tess, you're in Al-Mawasi, if I'm not mistaken. You say the famine will spread if things aren't addressed quickly, and the likelihood is it won't be addressed quickly. So how will you cope with what is happening? How will your colleagues cope with what is happening? How far will this go?
We continue to do everything we can. UNICEF is bringing in supplies slowly. It's not enough, but it is meeting some demand. I was heartened to see at these nutrition points that I was at the other day that UNICEF supplies were helping children recover from malnutrition, including a 4-month-old baby who is almost out of the woods now and was able to breastfeed from his mum for the first time. So when we do get this aid in, it does make a difference. But we are concerned that not enough is going to continue to come in. And we're also concerned about this threat of an increased military offensive in Gaza City. Of course, this is the place where famine was classified today. And so if military operations escalate there, that would be, I think, unfathomable for us to imagine how that is going to affect the 1 million people there, half of which are children. Many are malnourished, others are in incubators or in intensive care in hospital. It's frightening to think about what would happen if that occurred. And, you know, people must be protected, whether they choose to remain there or whether they choose to flee.
Your message loud and clear, Tess. Bear with us. I'll go back to Noga in Jerusalem for more analysis of what has been said politically. Noga, thanks for bearing with us. Israel Katz, Defense Minister of Israel, has been saying things about what will happen to Gaza. Can you tell us about that? Tell us what the plan could be.
Yes, I can't tell you what the plan will be because the Israeli government seems to be intentionally murky about what the plan will be. The Prime Minister announced that he would authorize a plan to invade and occupy Gaza City without specifying. To the best of my knowledge, the Israeli ministers, the few ministers in the Security Cabinet who voted on this, did so without seeing an actual operation plan ahead of them. It's unclear here whether the Chief of Staff of the Army, who, remember, when this plan was first brought to the government, opposed it vociferously. It's unclear whether he has already authorized it. And what we heard from the defense minister today was another version of the Prime Minister's kind of bellicose attacks against everyone. In this case, Israel Katz, the defense minister, warned that, and I'm quoting now, that the gates of hell will open and that Gaza will be left in ruins exactly as Khan Yunis and Rafah have before. I would like to point out, again, in the political realm, that Prime Minister Netanyahu previously told Israelis who wanted this war to end already more than a year ago, that Rafah had to be conquered so that Israel could survive against Hamas. And the same about Khan Yunis. And now, a year later, he's saying this exact same argument about Gaza. So it is falling like a lead balloon in Israel, and I expect the protest this weekend to be quite significant.
In terms of what this means for the hostages, Noga, just to sort of take a brief detour into this other important aspect of this story. I mean, clearly there are still hostages there in the Gaza Strip. If more bombing takes place, if the military operation is stepped up, clearly their chances of survival lessen.
Well, according to their families, they lessen to zero. We find ourselves at a really astonishing historic juncture in Israel, because it was exactly 1 year ago this week that when 6 Israeli hostages who had survived almost a year in captivity, by the way, in conditions of starvation, one was pulled out weighing 35 kilos. These 6 hostages were executed one by one with a bullet to the head when Hamas feared that the expanding Israeli operation was coming near to where they were being held in a tunnel. And so for Israelis, this is a very terrifying moment of déjà vu.
Noga, thank you very much indeed. Noga Tardopolsky, our correspondent in Jerusalem. Let's go back to the Gaza Strip and Tess Ingram from UNICEF, who's waiting there. Tess, thank you. We're getting towards the end of the interview, and I'm wondering how you're going to cope with what happens in the next 24 hours, the next 48 hours, as it goes on. Day after day, you're seeing so much destruction, so much pain and agony around you. It must be incredibly difficult for you to cope with and for your colleagues to cope with.
It is, and in particular for my Palestinian colleagues here who are enduring the same horrific conditions as the community that we're trying to serve. My colleagues are hungry and they go to work every day, despite that, trying to help people. They're just phenomenal. And many of them have been displaced multiple times. One of my colleagues told us yesterday, 14 times he has been displaced in the last 2 years, and yet he continues. So this is the circumstances humanitarian workers right across the Gaza Strip are under, but yet we persist because we're here for the children, and we've been in the Gaza Strip for decades, and we aren't going anywhere. We want to remain, including in Gaza City, where we have a presence, despite what happens there, so we can continue to serve the families that need us.
Tess Ingram of UNICEF in Al-Mawasi in the Gaza Strip, thank you very much for joining us, and power to you, putting politics and putting, all the ins and outs of the story to one side. What you're doing is working to help children, so you deserve all the power that we can send to you to do that. Thank you, and thank your colleagues.